This is the Zodiac speaking. I like killing people because it's so much fun.
In December of 1968, police were called to a grisly scene. The victims? Local teenagers Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, the first known victims of the nation's most notorious serial killer. From then until the mid-1970s, several more victims would come to light of the Zodiac Killer, some before, but many after. The self-proclaimed Zodiac Killer would go on to send local newspapers a 3-part coded message explaining his motives for the killings, and in a separate letter to the editors, he claimed his identity was embedded within the cipher messages. Although there have been many suspects throughout the years, there are really only a handful that stand out. Unfortunately, most of the evidence against these suspects was circumstantial or mostly based off speculation, so no official arrest has ever been made. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, there was only ever one suspect for the Zodiac Killer, Arthur Leigh Allen. Arthur was a former school teacher with a criminal record for child molestation at the time he was connected with the serial killer. He was picked out of a lineup by one of the men who survived a Zodiac attack. Other connections that have been made include Arthur and the killer wore the same shoes with a distinctive tread. One of Arthur's friends reported that he sort of confessed to the killings. Arthur only ever used one sick day during his career as a teacher, which happened to be the same day Cherry Bates was killed. With this information, as well as other information about Arthur, was compared to the FBI profile on the Zodiac Killer, they found many more red flags. Arthur was dishonorably discharged from the Navy. He was also known to abuse animals. He told his friends that he fantasized about killing random couples. And Arthur made no secret about his favorite book, The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell, which is a story about a hunter who decides to make humans his targets. The book is also mentioned in one of the Zodiac ciphers. Arthur Leigh Allen was never charged with the murders because his handwriting wasn't found to match that of the Zodiac's. Law enforcement also was never able to build a strong enough case against him before he died from a heart attack in 1992. In the early 1970s, a merchant marine walked in off the streets to maritime lawyer Robert Tarbox's office and confessed he was the killer. The seaman said he wanted to stop killing, Although his descriptions of the murders were not in detail, it was comprehensive enough that Robert had no doubt that he had talked with the Zodiac Killer. He said he never mentioned anything to anyone for years, citing attorney-client privilege. When the movie Zodiac in 2007 named Arthur Lee Allen as the killer, Robert knew it was all wrong and couldn't stay quiet any longer. He went public with his story, but still refused to give the Merchant Marine's name. The reason he gave for finally going public was that he wanted to do it for Arthur's family and for the people who knew him, saying they deserved to know he wasn't a serial killer. According to law enforcement, it is possible Arthur was a less than perfect suspect. Robert Graysmith, the writer considered to be an expert on the Zodiac case, supports the claim. One of his original theories was that the Zodiac was a merchant seaman, so it wasn't the first time it was mentioned. The true crime series on FX, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, was based on a book by Susan Mustafa, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, Searching for My Father, and Finding the Zodiac Killer. Her story was about Gary Stewart's search for a man named Earl Van Best Jr., the man who had gotten his mother pregnant when she was 14, then abandoned the child in a stairwell in an apartment building. The book claims that along the way he found a serial killer, not his father, and that he had a lot of evidence, including sketches, handwriting, and partial DNA to back it. The director, Keith Davidson, and executive producer Ross Dinnerstein decided to do their own investigation into the allegations. They followed the book's journey and disproved every one of the claims made. They even tracked Earl Jr. to Europe at the time of the Zodiac killings. When they informed Gary Stewart about their findings and showed him the finished series, all debunking his claims, Gary claimed that he loved it. This left producers wondering what had just happened. The name Ross Sullivan seems to pop up more on online forums than in any investigation. He was also featured on the History Channel's The Hunt for the Zodiac Killer. All accounts connect him to the Zodiac via Cherry Bates' murder. At the time of her murder, Ross was a Riverside City College student and worked at the last place she was seen alive, the library. People who knew him described him as the type of person who made others uncomfortable and said he always wore military boots, the same kind that were connected to the prints found at scene of 2 murders. Ross was also a student of cryptology, which people have theorized would be handy in writing the ciphers that stumped law enforcement and code breakers for years. Ross Sullivan also fit the physical description of the Zodiac Killer, was diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and had just moved to the killing grounds right before the murders began. It is believed Ross Sullivan died sometime in 1977. Richard Gaikowski was an ex-Army medic from South Dakota who moved to California in 1963. He was working as a journalist and an editor in the area at the time of the killings and tended to appear in various circles around the Zodiac. Darlene Ferrin, one of the Zodiac victims, reportedly had an ex-boyfriend who was a journalist named Richard and who was stalking her. Michael, who survived the same attack, later reported that she knew Richard was jealous and was stalking her. Richard's voice was also identified by a police dispatcher who took the call from the Zodiac Killer that night. In 2021, Gaikowski's diary claimed to have solved 2 of the Zodiac ciphers. The ciphers contained coordinates for one of the crime scenes, and the 13-letter cipher started with the phrase, "My name is." The encryption code gave him KAYR, which he connected to the one-time suspect, Lawrence K. Gaikowski believed there was also a typo because he saw the same typo in other words, too. K also was known to go by the name Kane and had been on the police radar at one time for the murders. One of the many men named by a family member as a possible suspect was Jack Tarrance. In 2008, Dennis Kaufman told CBS anchor Chris Pickle his stepfather was the real Zodiac Killer. Dennis said that he had spent the last 8 years gathering evidence, claiming that everything from sketches to handwriting was a match for the killer. He also claimed to have found a bloody knife while going through his stepfather's things, as well as some gruesome images on camera film, a black hood with the Zodiac symbol, and a confession. Jack Tarrance died in 2006. DNA testing done after his stepson went public came back as inconclusive. Rick Marshall first came to Zodiac investigator Robert Graysmith's attention after an hour-long phone call from a mysterious informant. When he started digging into the claims, he found that there was enough coincidences to search for the person the caller had directed him to. The caller claimed that a man named Bob Vaughn had worked with Richard at the Avenue Theater and was in possession of evidence that he had collected and stored in film canisters. Robert was never able to find that evidence. Surprisingly, Richard Marshall reached out to the official Zodiac Killer website, which now details a timeline of Richard's life and confirms that during the time the Zodiac murderers, he was living in the San Francisco area and working at a movie theater. It also states that he came under suspicion after making strange comments, which were overheard via ham radio. In 2001, Richard emailed the site to make corrections, claiming that the information was fifth or sixth hand. He also stated that he never lived in a warehouse, but he did lease an industrial property. Richard then went on and threatened legal action and never responded to any further attempts to contact him. Things were quiet in regards to Richard Marshall until 2008, when a nurse working in Richard's home suggested that he might be ready to talk. When detectives did finally talk to him, they concluded that he wasn't the man they were looking for. There was never a DNA test done, and Richard died that same year. Six years ago, a relative of Gary Post came forward to the San Francisco Chronicle, claiming that Gary was the Zodiac Killer, and also he had tried to kill him with a hammer. The Chronicle contacted police with this claim, but were told that there was no connection between Gary and the Zodiac Killer. Then Gary's former daughter-in-law came forward, also accusing him of being the killer, and said that she had moved away from California to be safe from him. In January 2022, a police report was made public, which documented how Gary pushed his wife Mary, aged 72, into a wall, breaking her pelvis in 4 places in 2016. The incident led authorities to lock him up in a mental facility because he was found too mentally incompetent to face trial. In October of 2021, the Case Breakers, which is a team of over 40 cold case investigators, composed of former law enforcement investigators, military intelligence officers, and journalists, claim that Gary Francis Post, who died in 2018 at the age of 80, was in fact the Zodiac Killer. The group claimed to have uncovered forensic evidence and photos from Gary's darkroom. They also noted that the scars on his face matched those described on the killer. They also claimed that removing the letters from his name from one of the Zodiac ciphers revealed an alternate message. Unfortunately, the case breaker's findings have been dismissed by investigators and FBI. The FBI states that the Zodiac Killer case remains open and there is no new evidence or information to report. For over 50 years, police and amateur investigators have searched for the identity of the Zodiac Killer, never coming close to finally making an arrest. A serial killer who murdered at least 5 people, terrorizing the Bay Area residents and taunting the police in the 1960s and 70s, seems to have just disappeared without a trace. The mystery left behind still grips the public's imagination and has spawned many books, movies, crime shows, and websites through the years, along with a trail of tangled theories. Will we ever find out who the real Zodiac Killer was? Only time will tell.